You know, from certain angles, this Cummins Explorer swap is starting to look close to completion. From certain angles, if you squint. And from other angles, not so much. One of those angles that it's not looking complete from is in the interior. So this is probably the area that it needs the most work, and this is what I'm going to work on next. Of course, there's one other area that needs a lot of work, but this I'm going to address later. The first thing that I need to address is that even though I installed a knuckle shaker, there's no third pedal in here. This thing started out as an automatic, so no clutch pedal. I need to install a clutch pedal. Luckily I have one. So here I have the brake and clutch assembly out of the Green Explorer. All I need to do is swap out this assembly for the automatic assembly, which does not have a clutch pedal. Then I can have a clutch pedal. Now that the clutch pedal's in, we actually need to connect it to something. Right now it's just sitting there. So we need to get this connected to the transmission. On this vehicle, it actually uses a hydraulic clutch, not a cable clutch. This right here is the hydraulic system which connects the clutch pedal to the clutch inside the transmission. So this right here is your master cylinder. The master cylinder is the control cylinder which tells the slave cylinder what to do. So the master cylinder is connected to your foot with this rod and then through the clutch pedal. So that moves in and out, actuating the master cylinder. You've got a little bit of a reservoir here in order to be a buffer on the system and make sure that it can self-bleed out any air that gets in. And then as you actuate this cylinder, this cylinder, which is on the transmission, moves in and out, which pushes your clutch in and out. So what we need to do is of course install this on the transmission, and we need to install this on the clutch pedal. It goes through the firewall. A quick note on these, they can be a huge pain in the butt to bleed, so it's actually really nice to just buy the complete system like this rather than having to buy just the slave or just the master. That's what I opted to do. It wasn't very expensive. I needed all the parts anyways, and it means that I don't have to bleed it, which is really nice. The spot where the master cylinder goes is actually through the firewall right here. And then the rod comes out and connects to the brake pedal up here. But since this was an automatic, there's a block-off plate right there. So I need to remove this block-off plate so that I can actually put the master cylinder here. This is the master cylinder for the NV4500 for the Cummins transmission. And as you can see, it doesn't have any of the mounting hardware on it. This is the master cylinder for the Explorer transmission, and this is the mounting flange. So I'm going to need to figure out a way to get this mounting flange onto there. Clutch safety switch, I won't be needing that. All right, about an hour worth of grinding and some paint, and this is what I came up with. Internal features like this can be really hard to get right, and that's why it can be really nice to have a straight grinder or a die grinder like this. You can put a stone on it for cleaning stuff up and making fine adjustments, and you can also use these sketchy little zip cuts for a straight grinder These work pretty decent. I wouldn't cut anything that's very thick at all. Like I would say probably something like an 1/8 inch is the max I would ever cut with these, but they do work all right. I think I got these from Wolverine on Amazon or something. I'll link this crap because I think it's really nice to have. It's one of those things that you don't use every day, but when you need it, you really need it. Because there's not really any other way that I know of to do features like this unless I had a mill or a router or something. So here's what it looks like. So that pushes onto there, and then to lock it into place, you rotate it like that, and then it's locked into place. And there we go. There's my mount for the master cylinder. Let's get it installed. Well, that doesn't work at all. This rod needs to go into that cylinder, but it also needs to attach here to the clutch pedal. It is way, way too short. So I need to figure out what I can do. I could just extend this rod a bunch, but the thing is, once you put this in the cylinder, you can't get it back out. So anytime I need to replace that master cylinder, which is a wear item, I would have to make a custom rod. So I'm not sure what I'm gonna do yet, but I will figure it out and get back to you. It's crazy, when you try and put a Cummins in a Ford Explorer, you run into lots of surprising issues. I molded over a little bit, and I'm just gonna extend this rod. It does mean that it's gonna make it a little harder to swap out my master cylinder if I ever need to, but it's not impossible to do so. For example, I already got this rod out of the Explorer master cylinder, and to make that work, all I did was stuck the master cylinder on my bandsaw and cut it in half, and then the portion that was on the end of this rod, I just pulled that out, cut it open, and I got the rod out. So I'm not too worried if I have to reuse this rod. If I ever replace the master cylinder, it's not going to be too much of a pain, and any other way that I could choose to do this is going to be way more complicated and way more work. So I'm just going to keep it simple, stupid. I'm going to just cut these, weld them together to make an extension, and call it good. So I've got the long one from the Explorer cut and the short one for the Ram clutch cut. And all I need to do is weld those two together so that I have the right end here for the Ram's master cylinder, but I have the length that I need. A couple quick notes about doing something like this. First off, you want to have a vague idea of what you're welding. You want to make sure that this isn't magnesium and this is aluminum or some other garbage. One way you can do that real quick is by just setting it on the grinder and see what kind of spark it ends up making. When I grind that, nice long sparks, they branch out at the end. When I grind this one, nice long sparks, they branch out at the end. Because they're sparking, they're not magnesium or aluminum or any garbage. Because the sparks are long and they firework out at the end, we know that they're probably a very similar material. Welding these will be fine. You can just take these and butt them up against each other and run a weld bead all the way around it. That would definitely work. However, then the surface area of your weld bead is really small. So if all I do is butt them up together like that, then you get one that looks like that, butt it up against another that looks like that. And what happens is you weld that there, you get a little penetration like that, you weld that there, you get a little bit of penetration. Your total weld area is here, but there's all this gap in between that doesn't actually have any weld. You're probably not going to get a full penetration all the way through. So alternatively, what you can do is you can grind a bevel on the end of this. So if I grind a bevel like this, so I just take off that edge, now I can do my root pass right there, and then after that I add another pass there, 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 and then I can even do one big cap over the top. And if I do that on both sides, then I get all of this weld material I wouldn't have otherwise gotten. Just grind a bevel in it and do multiple passes, and then you can get basically full penetration regardless of how strong your welder is. You just do more passes if your welder has less penetration. Now that they have a bevel on them, the other thing I'm going to do is wire wheel them, because this is some sort of galvanized coating, or they're stainless. These might actually be stainless. Either way, I want to make sure that the edges of these are clean, and if it is a zinc coating that's on them, you do not want to get that zinc fumes in your lungs. Look up metal fume fever if you're wondering why. My mistake, pretty sure these are stainless. I'm going to use the stainless rod on my welder just to be safe. This step isn't strictly necessary, but to make sure I get them butted up straight and not cockeyed, I'm actually going to set these on my lathe. Again, this step is completely not necessary. You do not need a lathe to do this, but since I have one, I'm going to use it. It'll make sure that this thing comes out straight, which it's not even that critical if it does, but you know. I'm not quite sure what material that was. The weld turned out okay. Definitely could have been better, but I know I got lots of weld in there and I know it'll come out fine. Additionally, if I move the tailstock out of the way, you can see it came out very straight. Now it's not perfectly straight, there's a little bit of a wobble in it, but once again, this does not need to be critically straight, and that's way straighter than I would have gotten it any other way, so that turned out pretty well. Still don't know what these materials were. It made like a white film over here, which makes me worry that there was some sort of zinc or something weird in it. They're magnetic, which would imply that they're not a 300 series stainless steel, but they might be a 400 series stainless steel. I welded it with 308, so I should be fine either way. Whether it's a 304, 316, or 400 series, I believe a 308L rod will weld them all. I'm happy with that. Just for giggles, I went ahead and ground it down, and not perfect, but it almost looks like a stock part now. Let's test fit it. Alright, here's the scary part. If I put this rod in the master cylinder, I can't get it back out without destroying the master cylinder, so this needs to work. Otherwise I'm in trouble. Well, that puts my clutch about even with the brake. Let's go put the slave cylinder on the transmission, and then we'll see how the clutch works. I've got some bad news, and I've got some good news. The bad news is that the clutch pedal does not go up far enough. However, it's really close. The good news is I have a lathe. I'm just going to take the spot that this actuator hooks up, and I'm going to move it down and over on the clutch pedal a little bit, and that should put me where I need to be. What I do is make a piece that will hook this arm onto the clutch pedal in a slightly different spot, and hopefully that's all the adjustment that I'll need, and the clutch pedal will work. Let's make a piece on the lathe, and hopefully that'll fix this problem. That is clutch in. The pedal feel actually feels really good, so it's about perfect right there, which I'm really happy about. The one other minor thing I have to do on it is I need to mount the reservoir, but it's getting really late and that's going to be easy. I'm not going to worry about that right now. Cummins Explorer has a clutch, which is really exciting, and the clutch feel feels really good, and yeah. Now I've only got 2 more pedals to hook up, the brake and the throttle, so thank you for watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you want to stick around and see more, and thanks for hanging out with me in my garage today. Hope to see you next time.